Thanks, Blake. Though President Trump has tried to temper expectations ahead of his one-on-one sit-down with Russian President Vladimir Putin, many hope progress can be made on a number of key issues. Here to break down these points of tension is international policy expert Michael Santo and national security attorney Christopher Swift. Welcome to you both. Christopher, I'll start with you. Meddling, of course, is one of the big issues, and the president taking fire even from his own side. Trey Gowdy notably saying, hey, the president has to deal with this today. Here's what he had to say.
Your first request of Vladimir Putin needs to be, tell us which airport we can pick up the 25 Russians that tried to interfere with the fundamentals of our democracy. If you really claim you had nothing to do with it, then you should be as shocked as we were that your military was being used to impact our election.
And is that even possible, Chris? I mean, can we do that? We don't have an extradition treaty with Russia.
No, we don't. But in Vladimir Putin's Russia, Vladimir Putin can do whatever he wants. Look, Congressman Gowdy is 100% right here. This needs to be top of mind for President Trump going into the meeting this morning. Election meddling is not a matter of domestic politics. It is a matter of national security. And if the United States doesn't take a hard line on this and isn't consistent, it's not just going to hurt us here in the upcoming elections, including President Trump's re-election campaign in 2020. It's also going to have broad implications for our allies in Western and Central Europe who have been subjected to this kind of meddling for the better part of a decade now.
Let's get over to Michael for a second, because I really want to talk about this idea of what's going on in Syria. And it seems that the administration, Trump in particular, wants help from Russia in Syria in getting Iran out. Is that possible? What kind of role could Russia play, and what's realistic here?
Well, that's actually realistic, that the Russians do seem to be helping limiting the role in Iran, because Iran and Russia are only really allies of convenience here. The Russians, I think, are exploiting the Iranians to further their goal. But the reason that we have to be very, very careful is I think that Russia's primary agenda is to weaken American power globally, and Syria is just one of their fronts. So their primary mission is to mess with the United States. They don't want to get involved in an Iranian-Israeli war, and that's why they're kind of limiting Iran, because their agenda is against the United States and is more global in nature, and they don't want to get diverted by Iran. But we have to...
All right. Well, Chris, pardon me for breaking in there, but there are a couple other issues we really need to get to here. And one of them is the annexation of Crimea, which, oh, by the way, none of Europe talks to Russia right now because of this. Relations, even with our country, are at a post-Cold War low. What can happen on this topic? I know the Russian president is eager to have Trump sign on to whatever policy he wants to use when it comes to Crimea. What do you see happening today?
Well, like with the elections, it's absolutely essential that President Trump take and maintain a hard line on Crimea. Vladimir Putin is the first head of state in the 21st century to invade another country and annex its territory. The last time that happened, it was Saddam Hussein who did it in Kuwait. The international community doesn't allow that. It's against the rules and norms of international law. So, look, there's probably not much that President Trump can accomplish on that front, aside from to be consistent with past U.S. policy on this and to back up our allies in Europe.
Michael, I want to get you to the New START treaty. This is critically important and something that actually could happen. I mean, expectations have been driven low by the administration on these talks. But, you know, this deal, which is really important, really for the safety of the planet, it expires in just 3 short years. Could this be renewed at this meeting?
It might, but many experts feel that the Russians got the upper hand in the New START deal, and it only applies to strategic nukes. The problem is with tactical battlefield nukes, the Russians have an enormous advantage. They have at least 4 times as many as us. And the other problem here is Putin is violating the INF Treaty, which is the most important treaty that President Reagan was able to achieve with Gorbachev. So Putin is not a good faith negotiator. Nuclear war strategy is very complex, and President Trump is new to this game. And we have a real Cold War going on with Russia. If we look at what's going on in eastern Ukraine and Syria.
Well, that's well put. A new Cold War. I think you make a very important point there. And the big question, of course, for both actors here, can we trust Putin to make good on whatever he promises today. Michael and Christopher, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We've got a lot more coming up on this historic day. President Trump expected to press Russia on meddling in the 2016 election. What's the response going to be from Vladimir Putin? We're going to take a look at that and take a look at futures this morning. A little bit of a bump right now on your Monday. Dow up 48 the pre-market, S&P up 3, NASDAQ up 14.5. A lot of earnings on tap this week. You're watching FBN AM Early Edition.
The process and the investigation are playing out, and that's part of holding Russia accountable and responsible for election meddling and malign activity.